Hello, everybody, and bonjour to one and all. My name is Evan, and I'm joined by Lou, and this is our week 2 broadcast of the group stage, and we also call this week 5, so of the World Cup of Pokemon VGC, sponsored by Elgato, GG, and Metafi. And this is actually a very important week for so many teams because we are already into the group stage. We are halfway through, and there are so many matches to go through to get as many wins as possible, to get out of groups, to finally get into top 16. And last week was a crazy week. Week 1 of groups, we saw 4 ties from 8 countries, like Spain tied with Taiwan. That was crazy. India, Thailand, Singapore tied with Philippines, Switzerland, and Argentina. And there were 6 matches that went 5-3. So there were so many matchups that were so close. Yeah. So how are you feeling this week 2 going into the rest of the group stage, Lou?
Well, I love this part of the competition because, like you said, we're in the group stages. We're in that kind of second chunk of the competition, and we're already seeing the caliber of these players. Like you mentioned, there's been so many draws. It's showing how close these competitions really are, and that the players are really bringing their A game. We've had a few surprises, a few upsets, and it looks like week 2 is just going to bring us more of that extraordinary action.
Yeah, so I'm very excited to bring you guys more games from this week. From all the players, we get to feature as many players as we can, and we get to see exciting games, especially leading into Worlds. So before that, these are our socials. Remember to give us a follow. We are on Twitch here, Victory Road VGC, and we also have Twitter, YouTube, and Discord. And as usual, all the information, all the scores, and interesting statistics can be found in our website, www.worldcupvgc.com.
Yeah, I really cannot emphasize enough how important it is to go check out the amazing website put on by Victory Road, www.worldcupvgc.com, to get all of the amazing action, statistics, teams, Pokemon, players, every single statistic you could want or calculation is going to be there. And not only World Cup information, if you go onto the main Victory Road website as well, they have rental teams, plethora of kind of information and articles and just all the resources you need as a video game trainer to get started on that ladder.
Yep. Speaking of the Victory Road website, recently there were a few very interesting team reports that from successful teams from the nationals or the regionals that went past, and these are really good to read and very good to prepare for the upcoming World Championships. And for today, these are our matches, and these are the countries we are featuring. We're trying to do this a little bit early, but in Asia time, because I'm from Singapore, so we have players that we're featuring from Vietnam, from Korea. And we also have France versus Puerto Rico, US versus Sweden, and finally, to end things off, Spain, the reigning champions of World Cup, versus Poland.
Yeah, I mean, this is only the Friday broadcast of the weekend, and we're kicking it off in such style with these 4 amazing matches. Let's take a closer look at that first match on the roster, because between both Vietnam and South Korea is going to be our very first match. And you can see the score at the minute is 1-2 to Vietnam. So they're just edging out in front, but there are still so many games to play for and so many opportunities for South Korea to try and claw it back. As you can see from our kind of introductory slide there, we are going to be showing the match that's second down on that list between Trung Lee of Vietnam and Jun-Hwan Kim from South Korea.
Yep. So looking at the teams that players are bringing, like these are really games that matter a lot. So it feels like they are going for comfort, more or less, right? And we see from Jongso, we see like a standard sort of Rinya Sun team, quite a lot of Groudons here, and also a Calyrex Ice Palkia with the Trick Room strategy.
Yeah, seeing a lot of Charizard on there as well across both teams. And of course, a lot of Incineroar and Sun. Just Sun shining down across this particular matchup between these two countries. But let's dive a little bit closer into our first match as well and take a look at our player profile so you at home can get to know our players a little bit better as well. Because the one thing I love about this particular World Cup is we have a lot of players that maybe we're not as familiar with in terms of kind of knowledge. Maybe they're not as experienced players as well. And this gives our newer players such an amazing platform to establish themselves and kind of introduce themselves to you, the audience.
That's such a good point, because the team members that are being chosen to represent the team and represent your country, they must have a reason, right? They must have been really hardworking, throughout the year, throughout Series 12, to be chosen to be on the team. So being featured on stream, I really think that this is a very, like a pride, like good like a good way to show your skills and show how good a player you are towards for everyone else to see. So from the left here we have Trung participated in the World Cup last year and mainly used like Zacian and Kyogre teams. Interestingly, for this year in 2022, his record is 1-1, and he has been using like unorthodox Pokemon in a record and Trevenant and managed to win with a Trevenant last week. So if you guys are interested, you can go to the website to check out more in the Vietnam page. But I thought that was really interesting, and from my friends from Vietnam, they said that he's an up and coming player from last year to this year. So he's been really hardworking and doing well at the game.
Yeah, I love to hear that, particularly the kind of creativity with the Trevenant and getting the win. I would love to be able to pilot a Trevenant as well as that. And of course, both our players here mostly have the accolades from 2021. So it's good to start establishing themselves a little bit more as well and carving out those reputations for themselves. On the opposing side, we have Jun-Hwan Kim, who again has a lot of accolades through from 2021, some top 8 placings, some first place as well. So again, has been kind of grinding away at getting those kind of top place finishes here. They've used similar teams before, but there seems to be a kind of toss-up between using Landorus or the Thunderous. So it's interesting to see which genie is coming in today, and it's going to be that Thunderous.
Yeah, so right away we see the teams here, and these teams are not like teams that are like the restricted cores are common, but I feel like the support mons or the other Pokemon on the team have been tossed up a little bit. Like from the team on the left, the Calyrex, Ice, and Palkia core, you typically see like a Incineroar or a Tapu Fini on the team, but instead we have Amoonguss and Indeedee double redirection with Porygon 2 and Regieleki. And from Jun-Hwan's side, I did a little bit of research. There was a Korean nationals, so he actually used this Zacian and Calyrex Shadow core, but the Thunderous was a Landorus, so I feel like he has been practicing this Zacian and Calyrex core as much as possible. So I think this is probably a mode that he prefers, something to do as go fast and hit hard, especially with that Tailwind support.
Yeah, you've really got two different speed stories here. On Trunk's side, it really is a lot more of that kind of setup for Trick Room. You want to be able to get your slow Pokemon such as the Calyrex or the Amoonguss or the Porygon 2 in play as well. Porygon 2 and Amoonguss being so disruptive and able to kind of provide that support to allow a Pokemon like Calyrex or even the Palkia to be able to capitalize and hitting hard with the damage. Whereas on the flip side, with Jun-Hwan's team, it like you said, Evan, it's so speedy. You've got, even just looking at the stats of these Pokemon, Zacian and Calyrex Shadow Rider already known to be so fast, as well as that Regieleki, throw in Tailwind to support, then you are going to be so speedy. You've got to watch out for that Trick Room. The leads are coming out, and it is going to be that Calyrex Shadow Rider paired up with the Incineroar. And on the opposing side for Trung, we have got the Regieleki and the Porygon 2.
Yay, Regieleki straight away on the field, bouncing about. But
love it.
Yeah, so interesting speed interactions here, because Trung actually opts to go fast, right, to bring the Regieleki in to possibly do as much damage as possible and try and set up Trick Room. But Jun-Hwan actually prepares for this and goes for the Incineroar lead, threatening that fake out pressure. It's interesting to see the Porygon have Trace and Trace Intimidate to bring Incineroar back down, which is quite sad. I feel like the Trace activates naturally because you can't copy the S1 from the Calyrex Shadow. So I think it's a bit unfortunate for the Incineroar, but I think it still comes down to positioning here and how you get your Pokemon in the correct game state.
Yeah, and it's really trying to figure out how to work around this Porygon 2. You've got Fake Out this turn, but on the next turn, you're not going to be able to utilize it. And there's not normally a lot that something like Calyrex Shadow Rider, being the Ghost type and wanting to click those Astral Barrages, is able to do to the normal type Porygon 2. It is going to be a Dynamax straight out the blocks though for Trung, and it is going to be that Regieleki. Love to see it, Evan. Looking so happy and excited, getting all the electricity on the field, ready to apply a lot of big pressure, and this could easily be trying to get a knockout here. It's going to be a Dynamax apiece though, with Jun-Hwan also Dynamaxing.
Wow, I'm curious to see what this Dynamax target is, because it's rarely an Incineroar, and yep, sure enough, see the Calyrex Shadow. I feel like making use of the Dynamax to get as much bulk as possible with the double HP. But I'm curious to see where this Regieleki targets into, and I'm having flashbacks of week 1 where we saw Shoma Honami use like a helping hand Porygon with the Regieleki, but we don't see a helping hand here. Pick out goes into the Porygon. Max Lightning actually actually is able to take out the Incineroar. That's very crazy. And after this, Porygon should... No, Calyrex should be able to move next.
Yeah, I mean, that was so much damage. Incineroar is out of the field as Regieleki reveals it was holding that life orb, so getting the extra damage coming off from that item boost. As the Max Quake comes out for the Calyrex Shadow Rider, this goes into Regieleki. He's able to hang on, however, thanks to being in the Dynamax and getting double its HP stat. But of course, Calyrex is also going to get itself a cheeky special defense boost in the face of any more lightning attacks coming out from Regieleki. I mean, what a powerful start for Trung.
Yeah, very interesting turn, like very interesting moves coming out. So the Life Orb is something that you can expect on a Regieleki, but having a Max Quake on the Calyrex Shadow, that's quite a surprise. Usually, like, players would not have enough space for that move, but we do see it here, and unfortunately isn't able to take out the Regieleki, showing that maybe the Regieleki has some bulk invested in it, but having the special defense boost on the Calyrex is very good for Jun-Hwan's side.
Yeah, well, it's a max guard from the Regieleki on Trunk's side as Porygon 2 takes a huge chunk of damage from the rising voltage on the opposing Regieleki, also carrying a Life Orb there to boost up its attacks. And the Max Quake gets the double target into Porygon 2. Is it enough to pick up the KO? It survives on 1 HP! Just enough to be able to get a Trick Room off, which is exactly what Trung needs in this situation. You want to start flipping the speed stats around, because otherwise Regieleki, Calyrex, Shadow Rider can capitalize on that speed and start flipping the momentum into Jun-Hwan's side of the field. But Trung able to get that Trick Room off. Porygon 2, what a champ, Evan.
What is this? Like, how can a Porygon 2 survive like with two extremely powerful moves? That's a Rising Voltage, Life Orb in electric terrain, followed by maybe just like I wonder why Jun-Hwan went for the Max Quake into the Porygon 2. It shows that, you know, maybe it has only these two moves, like a Ghost type move and a Ground type, so it had to go into the Porygon 2. I feel like it's a good read from Jun-Hwan, actually, predicting the Max Guard and doubling into the Porygon 2. Unfortunately, isn't able to take it out.
Well, Porygon 2 able to move first here, going for damage into that Calyrex just to try and break that Focus Sash. Regieleki will, of course, go down to the Max Quake, while, you know, all these special defense boosts are starting to roll up on the opposing side of the field. The KO from the Regieleki does allow Trung the opportunity to bring in the physical attack of Calyrex from the back and apply a lot of pressure going forward, particularly as I believe that was the last Dynamax turn for that Calyrex. It does get the Grimnade boost, but the speed stats are definitely not in its favor going through the rest of these Trick Room turns. Rising Voltage comes out again from the Regieleki and will be able to pick up the KO against this Porygon 2, leaving Trung down to just his last 2 remaining Pokemon, but that could be what you need in Trick Room. You don't want to waste any of those turns, and to get potentially 2 Trick Room Pokemon, as we can see on the screen here, on the battlefield, Trung is in a great position to just start rolling out some damage.
Yeah, Trung has 3 full turns of Dynamax. I thought, like, the Dynamax on turn 1 from Jun-Hwan's side, the Calyrex Shadow, I thought it might have been a good idea if you get as much bulk as possible to survive like the Trick Room turns, but now Calyrex Shadow has to turn small, and having the 2 free switches of the restricted Pokemon on Trunk's side, the Calyrex Ice and the Palkia, is definitely like putting on so much pressure. Interestingly, both the Regieleki and the Calyrex Shadow have special defense boosts, so I think that could be useful against the Palkia. So let's see how much damage these attacks do.
Yeah, useful against Palkia for sure, but not so much against the Calyrex. It picks up the KO against the opposing Regieleki, does a significant chunk to that Calyrex, but it is able to hang on as Palkia goes for the Spatial Rend. Now, I believe it's at +3 special defense, but it is not enough to be able to save it from that big damage, and it will be KO'd as well. You know, great damage coming out here from Trung.
Yeah, I thought this was the correct thing for Trung to do, and he just went for it. It's interesting to see like Jun-Hwan not switch out. Like, for example, if you could switch, like, predict the dragon move, right, the Spatial Rend, and switch the Zacian in, then maybe Calyrex can come in the late game and do more damage. So unfortunately, the last Pokemon, Zacian, has to switch in here, and there are still 2 more Trick Room turns to stall out.
Yeah, I mean, Calyrex able to go for that ground type move, high horsepower. Not enough to pick up the solid KO against the Zacian, so Palkia is just going to help out a little bit with a cheeky Earth Power to steal up the first game for Trung, and I have to say, such a commanding way to pilot Trick Room. That little Porygon 2 on 1 HP, if it had been KO'd, this could have been a very different game.
Yeah, so it's like the Max Quake on Calyrex Shadow wasn't enough to take out the Regieleki, then it wasn't enough to take out the Porygon 2. So I think that was really clutch. I think that pivotal moment of the Porygon 2 being able to set up Trick Room, allowing the two restricted Pokemon to sweep from the back. That was really important for Trung here. But interestingly, both players do have good information going into game 2. We do know that both the bouncing Regielekis are all holding the life off. So that could be useful information for both players.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting as well that Trung decided to Dynamax the Regieleki very early on at the beginning, because if your strategy is to get up Trick Room, often you maybe want to throw the Dynamax to one of your Trick Room Pokemon, but actually to go for your speediest Pokemon and just deal out such big damage, I think was a great decision. I'm going into Game 2, I'm interested to see what the adaptations are going to be. The leads are out. And for Jun-Hwan, we have got the Calyrex, Shadow Rider, and the Incineroar once again. And it looks like a mirror is happening from Game 1. It is the Regieleki and the Porygon 2 as well. Do you think there's going to be anything different from Jun-Hwan here, Evan?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I kind of agree with your like what you said earlier about the Regieleki from Trunks and Dynamaxing so quickly and being able to take out the Incineroar. I think that's a huge deal. And if you look at the opposing side, of Jun-Hwan's team, none of the Pokemon take Max Lightning well, right? They don't have a ground type. So I thought it's a good strategy in general for Trung here, and it's just unfortunate that Jun-Hwan went for the Max Quake, but just couldn't take the Regieleki out.
Yeah, that's really true. And again, Regieleki in a great position to apply a lot of offensive pressure, but you could also go for something here to pivot out, maybe preserve Regieleki for later if you wanted to go for an earlier Dynamax. You could try and go for the Volt Switch, maybe break the Focus Sash on the opposing Calyrex, and then start repositioning up. But you've got to be wary of the fact that Fake Out could come out from that Incineroar here. We saw it into the Porygon 2 last time to stop the Trick Room, but it could also go into that Regieleki, maybe just, thinking Trick Room's going to go up, there's not a lot I can do to stop it. We saw that from Game 1, the offensive pressure wasn't enough, so maybe I can try and just stop Trung from being able to go for the ball position plays in that Trick Room.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But like going for offense right away, like this is what Trung is deciding to do. I think it still makes the most sense since there's just so much pressure coming out from the fake out from Incineroar, that fake out pressure. I think Jun-Hwan might also want to repeat the same first few turns. Yep, I do see that he's Dynamaxing, right? Because he might think that having the Incineroar go down and having his own Regieleki to come in, and maybe that Rising Voltage plus the Max Quake earlier was a roll, because you never know how much HP that Porygon survived at. So if Jun-Hwan goes for it again, there could be a chance to get a higher roll and then take out the Porygon 2 and allow the Calyrex Shadow to sweep.
That is very, very true indeed. Maybe even something like a critical hit thrown in the mix could change things up. But we're going to see the same play out as we did with Game 1. The Max Lightning goes down into the Incineroar, picks up a solid KO against it. We'll be able to set up that electric terrain, which will make Regieleki very happy in the following couple of turns. And Porygon 2 unable to move thanks to the fake out of the Incineroar. Calyrex Shadow is yet still to move and is going to go straight again for another Max Quake, targeting down into that Porygon 2 this time, not the Regieleki. So getting that additional damage on Porygon 2 in this turn could be critical. It means that Porygon 2 is not going to be safe going into this next turn, particularly if Jun-Hwan is going to bring in the Regieleki now into that free slot from the Incineroar.
Yep, so here comes the Regieleki as usual. Oh, this is a shiny one. And it comes down to speed ties, and it seemed like Trung didn't want to play that speed tie back in Game 1. So going for the Max Guard on the Regieleki here. So if Jun-Hwan just goes for the attacks here, because you know that with that Max Quick boost you should be able to survive any attack coming out from the Regieleki, and just go for damage, probably going for an Electro Web and doubling it up. I think that could help the Calyrex Shadow a lot more. So here comes the Rising Voltage again. I got a feeling this can take out the Palkia.
Yeah. Big damage into that Palkia. The hard switch, I think Trung realizing the Porygon 2 is so precious in this match, and it's going to go down if, you don't protect it in this particular turn. So sacrifices the Palkia in order to allow his own Regieleki to pick up the KO against the opposing Regieleki with a critical hit to just kind of emphasize the power there, allowing the Porygon 2 to come back in and maybe be in a safer situation. Max Quake comes out again from the Calyrex Shadow Rider, going this time into that opposing Regieleki. We know that it is able to take it, and I love this play by Trung because the Porygon 2 can now come in and it doesn't have to worry about that Rising Voltage, and may be in a position again to use its defensive capabilities to survive and set up that Trick Room.
Yeah, I feel like it's all about getting up the trick room and then allowing the Calyrex Shadow at the back to just keep doing spread damage with that Glacial Lance. And Jun-Hwan is actually, just left with 2 Pokemon left. I'm not sure if that Max Lightning from Trunks Regieleki was like the critical hit on the opposing Regieleki. I'm not sure if it mattered because there could still be elements of speed control in terms of um, Electro Web or even threatening that very powerful Rising Voltage back into the Porygon 2. So unfortunately, Jun has to fight with these two last remaining restricted Pokemon for now.
Yeah, that's the thing. The restricted Pokemon looking quite formidable at this point, particularly as there is no Trick Room up and you've got two very speedy restricteds on the field. Both of them can try and target down into that opposing Pokemon, but instead it's going to be just a quick attack. Haven't seen that in a hot minute. Going down into the Regieleki to be able to pick up the KO against it. So there's going to be no powerful move coming out from the Regieleki on this occasion as Max Mindstorm is revealed. Going down into Porygon 2, it's not going to be able to pick up the KO, but I love seeing this adjustment, setting up the terrain so that the Calyrex is able to do double targeting on that next turn.
Yeah, that's true. So if Calyrex has the move Expanding Force, then it should be able to dish out a lot of powerful damage. However, Trick Room is being set up by the Porygon 2 and you do have to go up against this Calyrex here. Then Porygon 2 also showed that it had foul play earlier, so I think Trunks in a good position. It's down to just 2 versus 2 Pokemon, but Trunks does have quite a lot of control here.
Yeah, that's true. Calyrex in a position to, deal significant damage, but the issue is it's going to take super effective damage from either the Zacian or the Calyrex at this point, whether it's with the Ghost-type move or something like the Behemoth Blade, obviously going down into that Calyrex. And just with a Glacial Lance at this range, without any, of the boosts that it gets, it's not going to be able to pick up KOs necessarily. Porygon 2, however, is going to get the critical hit with foul play into the Calyrex, leaving it very vulnerable to get the KO. So, I'm sorry there, Calyrex Ice Rider, if I was doubting you there for a second. But as you can see, the damage is really not strong enough into that opposing Zacian, and this leaves the Calyrex Ice Rider so vulnerable to a KO.
It's really interesting to not see the Calyrex Shadow protect from Jun-Hwan's side because you might want to kind of predict that double up, knowing that the Porygon 2 has foul play. So curious to know like what item it is. Maybe it's not Focus Sash, maybe it's a choice item. And Trunk correctly, doubles into the Calyrex Shadow. Wow, that Babiri really just helps the Calyrex Ice so much that it took the Behemoth Blade, and now like it's so difficult for Jun-Hwan to get any footing in this game.
Yeah, I have to say this Calyrex is making me absolutely eat my words. The Babiri Berry is so critical there. It allows the Calyrex that also has now got the Chilling Neigh boost to be able to go for that high horsepower and pick up the KO against the Zacian. And Porygon 2 is going to help out too with some of those foul plays. Obviously, there's the Protect in this turn. It's not going to happen here, but it does look like Jun-Hwan is kind of pinned into a corner here. You just have to, I guess, keep clicking Protect until Trick Room is over and hopefully you can try and stall it out, but that is a tall order to ask.
True, I think I think that's the sort of like the only way out. Unfortunately, Jun doesn't want to go for it and like maybe hope for that high horsepower miss, but doesn't get it. And Calyrex Ice just easily takes the KO on Zacian over here.
Oh, fantastic. And the set goes to Trung, winning 2-0 for Vietnam. So again, just showing the commanding power of Trick Room, particularly when it gets piloted so well and so strongly, and you can just start capitalizing and rolling with those KOs.
Yeah, I thought like Jun-Hwan actually played pretty well, like having Dynamax like early and then always pressuring into that Porygon 2, but really unfortunate for I think the matchup in general to not have a super effective move for the Porygon 2 to be able to take it out as soon as possible, or maybe even have that taunt because the Incineroar just went down so early in the game. So just playing into Trung's hands here, and Trung was really just able to switch wisely or position wisely to get that Trick Room up and allow Calyrex Ice to then sweep the game.
Yeah, I completely agree. Porygon 2 was an absolute superstar in that match, being able to survive so well in game 1 and then obviously being protected so well in game 2, and both times able to get up that Trick Room and get the victory for its trainer. So a fantastic match to kick us off. We're going to cut to a really short break and then be back with the second match of the Friday broadcast.